subscribe to the channel. Here you'll find topics that can clarify your doubts about finances and how to stay aware of what's costing you money. Thank you, and let's get to our video. You might assume homeownership is an achievable milestone, a cornerstone of the American dream. However, current economic indicators suggest a different trajectory. This video will explore why owning a home might become increasingly difficult for many, examining the underlying forces at play without sensationalism. Our aim is to provide a clear, factual overview of this evolving landscape. This topic is profoundly relevant to you, especially if you're a young adult hoping to buy or an existing homeowner concerned about market stability. Understanding these trends can help you make more informed financial decisions, protect your assets, and plan realistically for your future. The traditional path to property ownership is undeniably shifting, and knowledge is your best asset. We will systematically cover the economic pressures, demographic shifts, and policy impacts that are reshaping the housing market. We won't promise easy solutions or predict an absolute outcome, but we will delineate the observable trends and expert analyses that paint a concerning picture. Our goal is to equip you with a grounded understanding of the challenges ahead. With a background in financial analysis and market research spanning over a decade, I've closely tracked these macroeconomic shifts affecting personal finance. My insights are drawn from reputable financial institutions, academic studies, and verified economic data, ensuring that the information presented here is accurate and verifiable, guiding you through complex market dynamics. To truly grasp the implications of these changes, it's essential to first understand the historical context of home ownership in the United States. What was once a widely accessible goal for many families is now becoming an increasingly elusive dream, and comprehending this journey is our starting point. For generations, home ownership in the U.S. was considered a fundamental pathway to building wealth and securing a stable future. Post-World War II policies, like the GI Bill and favorable mortgage rates, democratized access to housing, embedding the idea deeply into the national psyche. This era fostered an expectation that a primary residence was within reach for most working adults. You might remember your parents or grandparents recounting how relatively simple it was to purchase a home compared to today. This perception isn't nostalgia. It's rooted in a different economic reality. Wage growth often outpaced or kept pace with housing costs, and interest rates, while fluctuating, were generally manageable, facilitating widespread property acquisition across income brackets. However, over the past few decades, a significant divergence has emerged. Home prices have steadily climbed, particularly in desirable urban and suburban areas, while average wages for many Americans have stagnated when adjusted for inflation. This creates an ever-widening affordability gap that fundamentally challenges the traditional narrative of homeownership accessibility. Imagine you are saving diligently for a down payment only to watch property values increase faster than your savings can accumulate. This scenario is the lived reality for countless individuals, making the down payment barrier a formidable obstacle. It's no longer just about qualifying for a mortgage. It's about accumulating the initial capital required. This shift isn't just a minor blip. It represents a foundational change in the economic landscape. Understanding the specific factors that have driven this monumental change in affordability will illuminate why the future of property ownership in the U.S. appears increasingly grim for many. The widening affordability gap is arguably the most critical factor influencing the future of home ownership. You see home prices continuing their upward trajectory, driven by various market forces. Yet, for many working Americans, real wages, what your paycheck can actually buy, have barely budged for years, creating an unsustainable imbalance that makes property acquisition daunting. Consider the data. While median home prices nationally have surged by over 40% In just the last 5 years, median household income has grown by less than 15% in the same period. Source: National Association of Realtors, U.S. Census Bureau. This disparity means that the purchasing power of your income for housing has significantly diminished, pushing ownership further out of reach. This isn't merely a localized issue affecting a few expensive cities. While metropolitan areas undeniably face the most acute crises, the trend of home price appreciation vastly outstripping wage growth is observable in almost every corner of the country. Even traditionally affordable regions are experiencing rapid escalation, eroding accessible options everywhere. You might wonder why wages aren't keeping pace. Factors include globalization, automation, declining union membership, and a shift towards a service economy with lower-paying jobs. These macroeconomic forces suppress wage growth, making it harder for you to save for a substantial down payment, let alone afford the escalating monthly mortgage payments. As you struggle to bridge this gap, other economic pressures also come into play, further complicating the path to homeownership. Beyond income and prices, a complex interplay of interest rates, limited housing supply, and new market players significantly impacts what you can afford, and we need to examine these next. Beyond the fundamental mismatch between incomes and prices, you face additional headwinds from current economic conditions. Interest rates, for example, have a profound impact on your monthly mortgage payment. Even a slight increase in rates can add hundreds of dollars to your costs, effectively reducing the amount of home you can afford, sometimes significantly. Historically low interest rates during the pandemic, while stimulating some purchases, also fueled rapid price increases. Now, as rates normalize or even rise to combat inflation, the dual effect of high prices and higher borrowing costs creates a formidable barrier. For you, this means needing a much larger income to qualify for the same house you could have afforded just a few years ago. Another critical factor is the persistent shortage of housing supply. Years of underbuilding, especially of entry-level homes, coupled with restrictive zoning laws in many areas, have created a bottleneck. When demand consistently outstrips supply, prices inevitably rise, regardless of whether individual buyers can truly afford them. This scarcity benefits sellers, but not first-time buyers. Adding to this complex dynamic is the increasing presence of institutional investors in the housing market. These large corporations and investment funds are actively purchasing single-family homes, often paying above asking price with cash offers. They then convert these properties into rental units, competing directly with you, the individual homebuyer. This shift introduces a new competitive layer, fundamentally altering the market. While individual buyers are limited by personal finances, these large entities operate with vast capital. Understanding their impact is crucial because their strategies deeply influence the future of property ownership in the U.S., potentially reshaping who owns America's homes. The surge in institutional homeownership represents a profound, often overlooked shift in the housing market. These entities, ranging from private equity firms to real estate investment trusts, REITs, now collectively own millions of single-family homes across the nation. They view these properties as stable, income-generating assets, not as family residences. You might have directly experienced this competition when trying to purchase a home. Offers from institutional buyers are often cash, waiving contingencies and closing quickly, which makes it nearly impossible for conventional buyers, relying on mortgages and appraisals, to compete effectively. This financial firepower gives them an undeniable advantage in hot markets. Their business model hinges on acquiring homes, often in bulk, and then renting them out. This strategy not only removes potential starter homes from the for-sale market, but also expands the rental inventory, often at higher rates. For you, This means fewer homes to buy and potentially higher rent, creating a double bind. The concentration of ownership by these large players also raises concerns about market power. With significant portions of housing stock under corporate control, there's a risk of reduced competition among landlords and less responsiveness to community needs. Their primary fiduciary duty is to shareholders, not necessarily to tenants or local housing stability. This trend profoundly impacts the traditional path to building generational wealth through homeownership. If fewer homes are available for individual purchase and more are held by corporations, it changes the very fabric of property ownership. What are the long-term societal consequences of a nation increasingly composed of renters rather than homeowners? As institutional ownership expands and individual homeownership declines, you might find yourself living in what some economists term a renter nation. This isn't just a demographic shift. It carries significant societal and economic implications that impact personal stability, community development, and long-term wealth accumulation for a vast segment of the population. When you rent, you're not building equity that can be borrowed against for emergencies or used to fund retirement. Rent payments, while providing shelter, do not contribute to an appreciating asset. This means a crucial avenue for wealth creation and intergenerational transfer, historically available through property, becomes inaccessible for more and more people. The sense of community and civic engagement can also be impacted. Homeowners, often invested in their property values and local amenities, may have a stronger incentive to participate in local governance and community improvement. For renters, especially those facing frequent moves or rent hikes, this long-term commitment might be more challenging to foster. Furthermore, housing stability is often lower for renters. You are subject to lease renewals, rent increases, and potential non-renewals at the landlord's discretion, which can lead to forced displacement and instability. This constant uncertainty can affect children's education, employment stability, and overall mental well-being within families. This transformation requires you to rethink traditional financial planning. If home ownership becomes less viable, where do you direct your savings to build wealth and secure your future? Exploring alternative investment strategies and adapting to this new reality is becoming increasingly vital for personal financial resilience. The grim forecast for home ownership disproportionately affects younger generations, particularly millennials and Gen Z. You are entering the housing market at a time when conditions are arguably the most challenging in modern history. Facing a unique confluence of obstacles that previous generations did not encounter. One significant hurdle is the burden of student loan debt. Many of you are graduating with substantial educational debt, which impacts your ability to save for a down payment, and affects your debt-to-income ratio, making it harder to qualify for a mortgage. This debt often delays financial milestones, including marriage, having children, and buying a home. Another factor is delayed career progression and lower starting wages, especially when adjusted for inflation compared to previous generations at similar life stages. This means you have fewer disposable resources to allocate towards saving for a significant purchase like a home, slowing wealth accumulation from the very beginning of your professional life. The cost of living, broadly speaking, has also risen, encompassing everything from healthcare to groceries, further squeezing your budgets. With essential expenses consuming a larger portion of your income, the discretionary funds available for long-term savings, particularly for a down payment, become increasingly scarce and difficult to accumulate. These combined pressures create a scenario where the traditional timeline for achieving home ownership is significantly extended or even eliminated for many. Understanding these specific generational challenges helps clarify why the future of property ownership in the U.S. looks so different for you compared to your parents. While the challenges to home ownership are widespread, You'll find that their intensity varies dramatically across different regions of the U.S. Some areas, particularly major coastal cities and burgeoning tech hubs, have become almost entirely inaccessible for average-income individuals seeking to purchase property, creating distinct housing haves and have-nots. In these high-demand markets, median home prices can easily exceed $1 million, requiring down payments that are simply unattainable for most working families. Even if you earn a good salary, the sheer scale of investment required, coupled with exorbitant property taxes and maintenance costs, makes ownership an impossible dream in many places. This geographical disparity often forces you into difficult choices. Either accept a perpetual renter status, relocate to a more affordable, but potentially less economically vibrant area, or endure an exceptionally long commute to live where housing costs are lower. None of these options are ideal, and each comes with its own set of trade-offs. The impact extends beyond individual choices. It affects regional economic development and social mobility. If essential workers, teachers, and service professionals cannot afford to live in the communities they serve, it creates workforce shortages and exacerbates social inequities, leading to less diverse and less resilient local economies. This phenomenon highlights that the grim forecast isn't uniform, but rather a mosaic of varying degrees of difficulty. While some might still find paths to ownership in certain areas, the broader trend suggests you must critically evaluate location and financial strategy. But what if you need to adapt to a future where ownership is truly elusive? Given the evolving landscape, you might wonder if traditional homeownership is the only viable path. As the future of property ownership in the U.S. becomes more challenging, various alternative ownership models are slowly gaining traction, though they are not widespread solutions for the masses. It's important to understand these emerging concepts. Community land trusts, CLTs for instance, separate land ownership from home ownership. You would own the structure of your home, but the land beneath it is owned by a non-profit trust, which leases it to you at a reduced rate. This structure aims to keep housing permanently affordable, insulating it from market speculation, but access is limited. Housing cooperatives, co-ops, offer another model where you purchase shares in a corporation that owns the building, rather than owning a specific unit outright. This gives you exclusive rights to occupy a unit and a say in the co-op's governance. While common in some urban areas, co-ops often have strict approval processes and limited inventory. For many, however, the practical reality means adapting personal financial strategies to a future where renting might be the default. This involves shifting your focus from building equity in a home to aggressively saving and investing in other assets, such as stocks, bonds, or retirement funds, to build wealth. This requires discipline and a long-term perspective. These alternatives, while not universally accessible, point to a necessary adaptation in thinking about wealth accumulation. If you're finding traditional homeownership out of reach, it's crucial to explore these financial strategies. If you've found this information helpful so far, please consider subscribing for more detailed financial insights and practical advice. You might naturally look to policy interventions as a means to address the challenges in the housing market. Governments at local, state, and federal levels do implement various programs aimed at improving affordability, but their effectiveness often faces significant limitations, and sometimes even unintended consequences can arise. Local zoning reforms, for example, aimed at increasing housing density or allowing for more diverse housing types like duplexes or accessory dwelling units, ADUs, can help boost supply. However, these changes often encounter strong opposition from existing homeowners concerned about property values or neighborhood character, slowing progress significantly. Federal programs, such as first-time homebuyer assistance or tax credits, aim to alleviate some financial burdens. While these can provide a small boost, they often don't address the fundamental issues of supply shortage or rampant price appreciation. In some cases, increased demand from such programs can even inadvertently contribute to further price hikes. The effectiveness of rent control policies is also a contentious topic. While intended to make renting more affordable for you, critics argue that rent control can disincentivize new construction and proper maintenance by landlords, ultimately reducing housing quality and availability in the long run. The debate around these policies is complex and ongoing. Therefore, while policies exist, you should approach them with a realistic understanding of their scope and impact. There is no single silver bullet solution, and the political will to enact truly transformative changes often clashes with various vested interests. Understanding these limitations is crucial for an accurate assessment of the future. The decline in homeownership rates has profound psychological and social impacts on you and society that extend beyond mere financial considerations. Owning a home traditionally represents security, stability, and a sense of belonging, and the erosion of this dream can lead to significant individual and collective stress. For individuals, the inability to achieve homeownership, despite hard work and diligent saving, can foster feelings of frustration, anxiety, and even resentment. You might feel a sense of failure or that the system is rigged against you, impacting mental well-being and overall life satisfaction. This emotional toll is often underestimated. On a broader social scale, a decrease in home ownership can lead to reduced social mobility. Wealth accrued through home equity has historically been a primary driver for moving up the economic ladder and for intergenerational wealth transfer. If this avenue is blocked, class stratification could become more rigid, reinforcing economic inequalities. Moreover, the stability that home ownership often provides can lead to stronger community ties. When you rent, especially in markets with frequent rent increases or short-term leases, you might move more often, making it harder to establish deep roots, participate in local governance, or contribute consistently to community-building efforts. These social repercussions indicate that the future of property ownership in the U.S. isn't just an economic issue. It's a fundamental challenge to societal well-being and cohesion. Recognizing these impacts is vital as you plan your own financial journey and engage with the broader housing discussion. Given this challenging outlook, what practical steps can you take to navigate the future of property ownership in the U.S.? If home ownership remains a goal, a realistic and disciplined financial strategy is paramount. This begins with aggressive savings and a meticulous budget, focusing on debt reduction and maximizing your earning potential. You should explore all available first-time homebuyer programs in your state or locality, understanding their eligibility requirements and benefits. While not a magic bullet, these programs can sometimes provide down payment assistance or favorable loan terms, offering a slight advantage in a competitive market. Researching these thoroughly is a wise first step. Consider expanding your search geographically. While major urban centers might be out of reach, smaller towns or less saturated suburban areas could offer more attainable entry points. This might require flexibility regarding your commute or job location, but it could significantly open up homeownership possibilities for you. Another strategy involves exploring unconventional financing or ownership structures, as mentioned earlier. While limited, understanding options like co-ops, land trusts, or even tiny homes can broaden your perspective beyond the traditional single-family detached house. These alternatives may suit specific circumstances and financial profiles. Ultimately, resilience and adaptability are key. The path to home ownership today is more complex and less straightforward than for previous generations. But even if traditional ownership seems distant, there are still avenues for building financial security and personal wealth that you can actively pursue and control. If home ownership proves unattainable or undesirable for you, adapting to a renter-centric future requires a proactive approach to financial planning. You can still build significant wealth and achieve financial stability without owning a primary residence. The strategy simply shifts from real estate equity to other investment vehicles. Focus on maximizing your retirement savings through employer-sponsored plans like 401ks or individual retirement accounts, IRAs. These offer tax advantages and consistent growth potential, allowing you to accumulate substantial wealth over time. Treat these contributions as non-negotiable, just as you would a mortgage payment. Diversify your investments beyond real estate. Consider investing in a diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and exchange-traded funds, ETFs, that align with your risk tolerance and financial goals. This strategy allows your capital to grow in the broader economy, providing an alternative means of wealth accumulation and asset building. Prioritize financial literacy and continuous learning. Understanding market dynamics, investment principles, and personal budgeting will empower you to make informed decisions and adapt to changing economic conditions. Your financial independence will increasingly hinge on your knowledge and strategic allocation of resources. Embrace smart renting strategies. Negotiate leases, seek out stable landlords, and consider roommates to reduce housing costs. View renting not as a financial drain, but as a flexible expense that frees up capital for other investments, allowing you to build financial strength and personal freedom in other significant ways. Beyond individual financial strategies, you have a role in understanding and engaging with the broader macroeconomic trends and policy discussions shaping the future of property ownership in the U.S. Informed citizens can collectively advocate for changes that might alleviate some of these systemic challenges. Stay informed about local zoning initiatives, housing policy proposals, and urban development plans in your community. These local decisions often have the most direct impact on housing supply and affordability. Your voice, through community meetings or local elections, can influence policy outcomes that affect property markets. Support organizations advocating for affordable housing, smart growth, and equitable urban planning. These groups often work to influence policy at state and federal levels, pushing for reforms that could create a more balanced and accessible housing market for everyone, including future generations of homeowners. Critically evaluate political rhetoric around housing. Distinguish between superficial solutions and substantive policies that address the root causes of the affordability crisis, such as supply shortages, zoning restrictions, and the impact of institutional investors. An informed perspective is crucial for effective civic engagement. Recognizing that housing is not just a commodity, but also a fundamental human need, is a critical mindset shift. By participating in informed discussions and advocating for responsible policies, you contribute to shaping a more equitable future. This collective effort, combined with personal financial planning, is essential. In conclusion, the future of homeownership in the U.S. presents a significantly more challenging landscape than previous generations experienced. You are navigating a market characterized by high prices, stagnating wages, rising interest rates, limited supply, and increasing institutional competition. This confluence of factors creates a grim forecast for traditional property acquisition for many. However, a grim forecast does not equate to a hopeless one. It simply means that the strategies for achieving financial security and personal wealth require adaptation and innovation. You can still build a robust financial future, whether through strategic saving, diversified investments, or exploring alternative living and ownership models. The key takeaway is the importance of realistic expectations and proactive planning. Do not fall prey to promises of instant wealth or easy solutions. Instead, focus on verifiable information, disciplined financial habits, and a willingness to adapt your goals and methods as economic realities evolve. Your financial journey is yours to define. We encourage you to delve deeper into these topics, continue educating yourself, and seek advice from qualified financial professionals tailored to your specific situation. Engaging with the content we provide, sharing your experiences, and asking thoughtful questions in the comments helps foster a community of informed individuals. Ultimately, while the path to homeownership may be narrowing for many, the broader goal of financial stability and personal well-being remains achievable. By understanding these trends, planning diligently, and adapting creatively, you can navigate these complex financial waters and secure your own version of prosperity.